All right, what's up, folks? 138 MMA here with Eryk Anders, the man, ya boy. So we're gonna be chatting about his career. The dude's fantastic. I'm a big fan. As I mentioned to him when I was messaging him to get him on here for this interview, I became a big fan of Eryk when he was fighting in Lincoln, Nebraska against a guy named Tim Williams. And so I'm sitting there in the crowd, right? I'm watching this fight. Dude, that is the sickest knockout I've ever seen in my life. Poor Tim Williams, you kicked that poor man's head clear into the stands, I swear. And I think I was sitting like 3 rows behind his mom, so that was a little uncomfortable, but
Ooh.
it was a heck of a knockout. I've got to ask, the first thing I want to ask you, brother, how did that feel?
Um, it felt good, I think anytime you finish a fight, especially in that fashion, it feels great. That's what you train for, to finish fights. I don't want to fight 15 minutes, even though I think it was like the last 20 seconds of
Yep,
there's 20
close.
seconds left in the fight. Um, I always aim to finish fights. So, and then, they gave me a bonus on top of that. So that made it feel a little extra special.
You bet, brother. Dude, that's to this day probably the coolest head kick I've ever seen. So ever since, huge fan.
He hung it nice and low for me. So,
He sure
it's not like I
did.
had to kick it too high.
Okay, so you've had a lot of fights, right? And in your pro career, you've had, a pretty decent chunk of fights. But if you look back, you had a big amateur career as well. And I actually didn't realize that until after I had contacted you for this interview. You started fighting shortly after you wrapped up football. Is that correct?
Yeah, about 2 years after I'd finished football, I had my first MMA fight.
And you hadn't been training MMA during your football career, were you?
Yeah, I fought a bunch growing up. Fought a bunch, after college, just because I was a knucklehead. But never trained, how to fight. I just, just like, parking lot fights and in bars and things like that. But never like against somebody else who had ever trained or. I guess I got lucky in that sense because I always thought I could fight until my first sparring experience was with Walt Harris, who was already a professional
Sweet.
fighter and actually knows how to fight. Then I quickly realized, I thought I knew how to fight, but then I realized after, sparring with him, I was like, yo, I don't know how to fight, dude.
I definitely understand. So similar situation. The first time, the most helpless I've ever felt in my life was my first day at jujitsu practice with like a 40-something-year-old, like middle-aged chubby woman that just manhandled me. So
Yeah, that's the thing about jujitsu, you know. Of course, if like the skill level is the same, like the athlete's gonna win,
for sure.
more often than not. But if you go in there, fresh as a daisy, and don't know anything, somebody who knows something is gonna, and it's gonna be somebody unassuming, like a 15-year-old, like a old woman, and
Damn
it's a very
right.
humbling experience.
Yeah, dude, it definitely is. And I've seen that you've been doing a lot more grappling competitions as of late. And if I remember correctly, you mentioned when you were on the Rogan podcast that you've probably got less than 5 fights left in the UFC. Is grappling kind of where you're going to go from here with that, or what are you looking at?
Um, Dude, I don't know. I think jujitsu will always be there because it's much lower impact and time
For sure.
consuming and uh, you know, miles on the body than fighting is. I don't have to wrestle. I can pull guard, you know.
Right.
Uh, and a lot of those guys pull guard. So like, that's where like the struggle is a lot in in grappling is, to get to the mat if no one wants to pull guard. Wrestling is exhausting and it's hard on the body. So I think jujitsu will always be there for me, and I'm not getting punched in the face and hit in the head. So,
Sure.
you know, uh, being able to and they have like age groups too. So the older I get, I don't have to compete against 18-year-olds and 24-year-olds anymore, so like I said, jujitsu will always be there. MMA, the window is closing, the door is shutting. I'll be 37 next year. Hopefully, I can fight before I turn 37.
Hope so.
I got like 4 fights left on my contract, so I'll finish those 4 fights and move on to the next adventure in life.
That's fair. So that you're looking at those being your probably your last four then.
Yeah, depending on how my body feels, how I feel after, maybe we do some of those
Sure.
boxing matches.
Okay.
Mark's one of those YouTubers, or maybe like a Le'Veon Bell type guy, another former football player. I think that would be
That'd be
fun.
sick.
Um, I don't know what the landscape's going to look like. Those four fights may take a year, and they may take 2 years. I don't know, but I'm not trying to fight forever.
Right.
I'm
When you
getting up
don't look
there.
like you're slowing down either, because I mean, I watched your last fight with Mark Andre. I thought you won. I'm biased. I was rooting for you, but I mean, that was a good fight.
Yeah, I'm always gonna have that dog in me. You know what I'm saying? But after a certain point, there's points, and like some guys as they get older, like maybe if I fought that fight 3 years ago, I win that fight. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I don't think I'm slowing down. I think I'm still keeping it pretty. I train, pretty well. But the father time always wins. So there's the time comes for everybody. So
You're right about that.
but I'm glad I'm in the position. I'm able to like see it coming. I get to call my shots a little bit, and I got like to go out on my own terms rather than trying to fight forever and then it's over before you know it, and you don't got nothing to show for it. So um, yeah, I like the trajectory that I'm heading right now.
Absolutely, brother. Yeah, and I'm like I said, man, you still are putting on these great fights. So those next four fights, I think you're gonna crush it. I'm gonna be rooting for you. I put about a video on my channel a while back, and I listed my top 5 favorite fighters in the UFC. You are one of them, so definitely fantastic. Absolutely, always rooting for you.
Yeah,
But brother, let me tell
bro.
you. So the fans love to hear the old stories. So if you've got a couple of good stories from maybe the amateur days, maybe the early pro career, those are the stories the fans love to hear. What do you got for me, brother?
Um, I think like my first, not I think, but like my first MMA fight, this dude who I knew, who he like sold Alabama. He like kind of had his hands in everything. Like he sold Alabama memorabilia, so that's how I knew him. And then he knew this promoter in Huntsville. Um, so he's like, "Yo, do you want to fight?" I was like, "All right." And so like, this is like less than a month after training, after I started training. So I like, what can you possibly learn in a month? And like on my way up there, I was a degenerate, dude. I was like stupid. I was like smoking Newport cigarettes, and he calls me like it's like a 2 hour drive from here in Birmingham, and he calls me. He was like, "Hey, I'm already on the way." He's like, "Hey, they want your blood work. There's no commission at the time in Alabama, so he was like, "Hey, they want you to have your blood work, your blood checked for like HIV, hepatitis, and things like that." Within at least the last 6 months. Have you done that? And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And they just took my word for it. I was like, what? And then as I'm driving, I like thought, I was like, dude, what if the dude that I'm fighting did that and he
Same thing.
actually has hepatitis? You know what I mean? Like, and I fought twice that night. My coach didn't even showed up. He was a junkie, so he's probably like, barred out or pilled out, somewhere face down. And anyways, he didn't show up. So like I had a boxing match and an MMA fight. So I was just like asking people back there. I was like, hey, and people knew me from football a little bit, but not from fighting. And so I was like, hey, yeah, you don't know me, I don't know you, but corner me. You don't have to say anything. Just bring the stool out in between rounds and be nice. And no one would do it, but except this dude named David McAfee, who I actually worked at a kiosk in the mall for his mom. Um, he did it, and he fought that night too, and he cornered both my fights. I lost the boxing match, and knocked the dude out in MMA in the MMA fight in like 50 seconds. And I just, fell in love with it. And I knew that's what I wanted to do, right then and there. And then like my second pro fight, dude, this dude, it was like the first time having a promotion. And dude, he sends the contract, like, he faxes over the contract or emails it or whatever, and I'm reading the contract, and there's no money for the purse. I was like, so I called the dude and I was like, hey, what's up? It doesn't say when I'm gonna get paid. And he's like, oh, dude, just put whatever you want. And I was like, all right.
All right.
So I was gonna put like 5,000 and 5,000 or some crazy shit like that. And my coach was like, nah, don't do that because you want them to invite you back. So we did like 8 and 8 or some shit like that, like 5 and 5, 500 and 500 or 800, something like that. And I ended up doing. I fought 3 rounds, dude. This was a hard fight, dude. Not a hard fight, but like it was a hard fight for that time in my career.
That's been like what,
I went three
2015, right?
rounds. Dude, I suck with time. I have no idea the year.
Something like that.
It was early. Yeah,
There you
like
go.
several years ago. I've been in the UFC since 2017, so it was probably like a year and a half before that. So yeah, 2015 sounds right. And dude, I fought 3 rounds with this dude, and I got my check, and I deposited the check. The bank said that the money was there. Um, and I spent that money like that. You know what I'm saying? I paid bills and I paid my rent. I fucking, whatever. Took my, girlfriend on a date. And then like 3 days later, I look at my bank account and I have like negative, $2,000 in my account. And I'm like, what? And so like the check bounced. And for
Oh,
every transaction, the bank tried to hit me for like $36 overdraft fee. Dude, I got on the phone with the bank and like let them have it. I was like, hell no, this is not my fault. This is y'all's fault. Y'all said the money was there, and they're like, oh, well, you're responsible. Like, how am I supposed to be responsible for the check that somebody gave me? Like, I don't know that person. You know what I'm saying? They paid me. I fought to get that, by the way.
you did your part.
It's not on me. Anyways, and so I was like, I'll pay back the money that I spent, but y'all gonna have to do something with these overdraft fees. And dude, Alabama is such a wild place for fighting. Dude. I remember talking to that promoter, and dude, I know that he was like coked out of his mind, dude. He was just kept like, yeah, yeah, you know.
That's a great impression.
Dude, he's just a little mousy dude. Just like, yeah, dude, whatever, yeah, sure, go for it, yeah. And I was like, what? See, like, somebody who like, if you've been around like drugs before, you know the signs.
We all know those guys.
Yeah. And so he bounced, dude, and like I never got money, I never got paid. Yeah. So I was, Alabama just it's a wild place.
Is that
Wild
the
place.
only time that you've got shorted by a promoter?
Yeah. Yep.
That's pretty good then.
Yeah. Well, I always thought that they had to have like a security bond or like an insurance bond and stuff. And so like that shouldn't be able to happen. And at this time, my second pro fight, there was a commission.
Hmm.
And I remember talking to the whoever, and they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna find him, throw him in jail." They never found this dude. They never threw him in jail. I never got my money. And I'm pretty sure the commission kept that security bond
For sure.
and put it in their pocket. You know
You
what I
bet.
mean?
Dude, a
But
lot of the early commissions were just as sketchy as the promoters
yeah,
because they were
son.
basically promoters that are like, yeah, I'll be the commission.
Yeah, exactly.
So
It wasn't like that here, dude. I know the commissioner here. Like, I don't.
that's good.
I mean, the old commissioner. I don't know, dude. I never got paid. There's supposed to be checks and balances, and like the commission is there to make sure that that doesn't happen, and it did. So how did that happen? You know what I mean?
I mean, it definitely happened though. Your bank account said so.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
crazy.
it's not like, yeah, it hurt me at the time, but I'm good now. So
Yeah, I mean now because now you're in more real estate, right? Isn't that what you're doing these days?
yeah, we got a couple houses and stuff. Me and my business partner.
That's fantastic. And so that's kind of the retirement plan is going to real estate, right?
Not really go into real estate, but like have like assets, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like stuff that accumulates value and it's like appreciates instead of depreciate. Like a car's not really an asset, a house is an asset, land is an asset, things like that that, I can turn around and give that to my kids like that my kids can live off the rent of that house forever, until, they decide to do whatever they want with it. But, um, and, want to build like generational wealth, like for my kids and their kids, and not make their life so easy that they can't do anything for themselves, but like easy that they don't, like, I've been homeless before. I don't want my kids to ever, go through that, but,
Heard that, brother.
they should like struggle a little bit, but, homeless is a little extreme. You know what I mean?
Right. You're finding that balance. You want to find somewhere between homeless and no struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like my stomach hurts because I haven't eaten all day, kind of struggle, but not,
But not I
you
don't have
can
a
see
roof
my
struggle.
spine. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I
Like
hear
I'm
you,
dying of
brother.
starvation. You feel me?
I definitely do. I get that because so real quick. So like I lost my house in 2019 to a flood, and I was homeless for like 2 years because like you can't just go get another house right away if you don't have anything, right? And have any money, right? So I definitely know the feeling. It's good now. I got a house. We're back to. But like for a while there, like I definitely understand that struggle, and I know that if I didn't go through that, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today. I wouldn't, which isn't great, but I mean, I'm better, right? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
doing
yeah.
better. So I definitely understand the value in that, but like also as a parent, I get what you're saying. You need to show your kids like, hey, look, you got to struggle some. So to find that balance is super important, and I think that makes sense. Like you said, they can live off the rent of these houses that I'm accumulating for the rest of their life, and they're not going to struggle in the way that you did. But you're not going to just give them everything. You're not giving them the world, and that's awesome. That's a
Uh,
great value.
yeah, like my kids, like right now I'm remodeling my kitchen, and my kids are like 14 and 12, so they're kind of like in that stage where they don't want to really do much. So I'm just like, yo, I'll pay you to, you know, sand these cabinet drawers because I'm just gonna repaint them. You know what I mean? And I'll pay you and to sand them and to help me rip up this backsplash and things like that. And as soon as I said like I'll pay you, they hopped up immediately and got up, and
Money
but they're
talks.
good, man. They'll like go around the neighborhood and mow people's lawns and rake their leaves and walk their dog or whatever. They're like little hustlers, you know what I mean? So I want to instill that in them, but at the same time I want them to be kids, you know what I mean? We can
Right.
go to the movies, we can play video games, we can do all that. Like you need to be a kid yourself. You don't have any kids to support you know what I mean? You're a child, like, so go. But at the same time, like, learn how to do this because this is a life skill, you know? Maybe you like it and you end up doing this, for a living, later on down the road, so it's
That's awesome,
whatever.
man. And so, okay, last question for you. I know I'm cutting into the last little bit of time I got for you, but
You're good,
last
brother.
thing. So you mentioned, your kids are getting to like, being almost teenagers now. Do they look at your fights and be like, oh my gosh, my dad's the coolest guy on the planet? Or are they just kind of like, yeah, whatever, like you're at work?
Yeah. I think their friends think it's cooler than they do, or they just, you know what I mean? Like my youngest son, he's too cool, you know what I'm saying? He's
That's
like
fair.
Rico Suave, he's just, they think it's cool, you know what I'm saying? Like it's way cooler. Think, I think that they think it's way cooler than like if their dad had like worked a 9 to 5 or whatever, because
For
I
sure.
can take time off. Like if I don't have a fight coming up, I don't have to train like I have a fight, and we can go do things like, we can go on road trips. We can, sit, demo the kitchen. I don't have like a set schedule, so I think that they think that that's the coolest part. But also like that I go in there and fight people because their friends think it's cool. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it gives them cool points. It's like, oh, your dad's a fighter. Blah blah blah. So it's, yeah, they like it. They enjoy it, but at the same time, it's normal for them, so it's not as cool for them. You know what I mean? For them,
Right. It
it's
just
way
becomes
cooler
kind
for
of
their
regular.
friends. Yeah, it's I could be a banker to them. You know what I mean?
I imagine career day as like a kid for them. They were like, oh yeah, my dad's coming in or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, did that happen? Yeah,
That's
when they
sick,
were
man.
like young. I've been doing it. My oldest since he was like 2, and then my youngest, he's 2 years younger than him, so he came into my life when he was like 4, so and he's 12 now. So like over the last 8, 9 years, he just kind of grew up like that, So
So
it was
essentially,
really,
that's all
really
they've ever known.
super cool when they were young. But now as they get older, they got a little personality themselves. They have a little whatever. It's just not. It's normal to them. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I might as well be like a banker or
Right.
you know whatever.
So yeah, just some office job. It's the same thing to them. They're like, yeah, that's what
Yeah,
dad does,
exactly.
whatever. That's crazy. But like, I get it though. I understand. But hey, I know that cutting into your time. Is there anything that you want to tell the audience, the fans, tell them to check out, tell them to do, anything like that?
Man, you guys check me out. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat at Eryk Anders. Come support your boy. Check me out. See what I do on the day in, day out. And holla at me.
Awesome, brother. That's fantastic. Hey, thank you again for the interview. I'm gonna hit this end right now.